might think this is what we do every Sunday. We don't normally sing this many songs. We're doing this because today is a festival day for St. John's. On December 27th was actually our patronal feast day, the feast day of St. John the Evangelist, after whom our church is named. And we decided we were going to celebrate that day today. One, because it's a Sunday and people will actually show up on a Sunday instead of on a Wednesday. But two, it's especially important for us to remember our patron saint today, because this year, St. John's has been a church for 150 years. Back in 1873, St. John's Mission Sunday School was founded at the corners of Starling and State here in Franklinton. They were there for about 5 years before they moved to McDowell in 1878, and then in 1901, the first service was held on this street corner at Town and Avondale, and St. John's has been here ever since. There was an attempt in the late 70s to flee the city as a lot of flight was happening from urban areas in that time period and go out to the suburbs. But the diocese said, no, your church serves an important purpose, and we want you to stay in Franklinton. And so St. John's has stayed. And here we are 150 years later, continuing to do ministry in the community. So today is a feast day for us. It is a celebratory day because 150 years of ministry in this community is a huge deal. And I love that, especially for this being a 150th anniversary or a sesquicentennial, if you want to know the appropriate term, the proper scholarly term for this anniversary, that the reading for St. John the Evangelist, the gospel, is about this rumor that St. John would never die. It's an interesting rumor that is based on a mishearing of what Jesus said to Peter. And to give a bit more context, when the gospel begins, it's kind of in the middle of something already happening, which is usual. But in this case, what has been happening is really important for us to know, because Jesus has just told Peter the way he was going to die, and then says, "Follow me." That's not necessarily the most encouraging thing to hear. That your arms will be bound and you will be led to places you do not want to go. And Jesus said this to indicate the way he was going to die. And he said to Peter, "Follow me." It's not exactly a super encouraging thing, which makes Peter's response make a bit more sense. That he sees this other disciple, like, what about him? What about this guy? I don't know about you. I'd be pretty tempted to say, what about someone else? Like, I don't want to knowingly walk to my death. And so Peter wants to pass this off on someone else. Like, what about John? What about this other disciple? So Jesus says, look, if I want him to stay around until I come back, what is that to you? I'm asking you to follow me. And so that's one of the questions we have. Are we ready to ignore what everyone else is called to do and simply be the ones ourselves who respond and follow Jesus? Are we willing to be the ones who say, yes, I will follow you, Lord? It doesn't matter what that person is doing. It doesn't matter what that person is doing. It doesn't matter all these other people who may be breaking the commandments, who may be going against the faith. None of that matters because I am going to follow you. Other people's faith need not concern us. We should only be worried about our own faith. Are we going to follow Jesus? And then we get to this rumor about St. John, who was, of the original 12 disciples, was the last one to still be alive. And there was a rumor going around at that time about this mishearing that, like, oh, maybe that's what Jesus meant, is that John's going to live until Jesus comes back. Because here he is. All these other disciples have been killed or have died on their own, and John alone is left. So maybe that's what Jesus meant. And so we, as St. John's, have been here for 150 years. And if you look at least the past few, you might wonder why we're still here. We are not a large church. There's not a great many of us who are here every Sunday. And so we just seem to be going on, and we might just be here until Jesus comes back. Or we may close our doors tomorrow. The message here for us is that our future is not really our concern. The future of St. John's is not the concern. What is of concern is, are we doing what Jesus would have us do? If we are doing what Jesus would have us do, and the doors to St. John's close tomorrow, we would still be doing what Jesus would have us do. And if we're doing what Jesus would have us do, and St. John's exists for another 150 years, we would still be doing what Jesus would have us do. That future does not change. That's what's important. So what we shouldn't be doing is worrying about what the future holds. Instead, we should continue to ask ourselves, how can I follow Jesus? How can I be the light in this world that darkness cannot overcome? How can I be that peace that passes understanding for people who know no peace? How can I be a love that exists in the world for those who feel unlovable? And so right now, there are ways that we, St. John's, can do that, and we will continue to do that for as long as we are able. And soon after this service ends, there are those of us who are going to help with a meal that we're going to serve at 1 o'clock at a street corner for people who may not have another meal today, may not have another meal this week. We're going to partner with other churches, with other organizations in the area to provide whatever resources we can for people who are in need of resources that society would leave behind. That society would say, well, if you're poor, you deserve it. If you're sick, you deserve it. If you are unwell, if you are oppressed, if you are cast out, somehow that is your fault and not mine, and you can just deal with it on your own. But instead of that message that society gives, we, St. John's, are going to stand at this street corner, at every street corner we can, and loudly proclaim that Christ came for every single person. It doesn't matter what their immigration status is. It doesn't matter who they love, the gender of the person they love. It doesn't matter what gender they identify as. It doesn't matter what color their skin is. It doesn't matter how tall or short or skinny or fat, how much hair you do or don't have. None of that is a thing that separates us from the love of God. None of that is what separates you from the love of God. That is our message. And I will gladly proclaim that message here for another 150 years or 150 minutes. However long Jesus wants me to be here proclaiming that message, I will do it. And so as we celebrate 150 years of ministry, how are we going to respond to what comes next? Are we going to look around and see the desolate nature of our country, the darkness that is pervading our world, and become overwhelmed and throw in the towel? Or are we going to look around and see things that we can do to make this world a better place for every single person we come across? To make this world a better place for the generations that come after us. I may not live to see when Christ comes back, but I know that I will do what I can to make this world a better place for those who are here when it happens. I hope you will join me in continuing to be St. John's here at this street corner and in the world for however long God ordains it. So let's celebrate 150 years, and let's celebrate 150 tomorrows. And let's proclaim God's love everywhere we exist.